Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. This video is part of this series on how to knit a pair of toe-up socks. In this video we'll be doing the increases of the toe. So the first video was about the materials, the second video about the cast on, and this third video is about doing these increases here on either side that really make up the toe. So it's the green part here. So the increases to go from the few stitches up to the width of the sock. Next step in knitting socks, starting from the cast on, is to make the rest of the toe. And now we're going to start making increases. Every second round we're going to make an increase. Here's the cast on result from Judy's Magic cast on. And now we continue with the rest of the sock. So the rest of the toe, actually more specific. Pulling out, at this point it's still the bottom needle. At a certain point we're going to be able to fold these two like this, but at this moment you've still got them, the inside of the sock is a bit facing at this point. So don't worry about that, we'll swap it around the other way in a row or two. So I'm just going to pull out the bottom needle. And I'm going to knit one stitch and then make an increase. So first just knit that first stitch. Knit the first stitch, and now we're going to make an increase. I'm going to make a right leaning stitch. So if you look closely between the two stitches, there's a bar there. There's a piece. There's a little thread there. Scoop that thread up with your needle and pop it on. So you're scooping it up with your right needle and then popping it onto your left needle. You want to pop it up from like this, from front to back. Just show you again. So you're scooping up that, and if you can't find it, just dig a little bit forward. So scoop it up with your right needle and then pop it on the left needle from front to back. And now we're going to knit this stitch here. And it's important we're going to knit it through the front loop. The back loop is actually the easiest one. If you just stick it in there, you could knit it. But then you're going to get a little hole, and you don't want that. So the difficult way is the way to go here. And that means, and you might just have to hold on to this stitch with your needle, with your fingers or somehow, that you don't pop it off your needle. So you come through the front loop. And knit that stitch. Just scooping it up. And now you've made an increase. And this was a make one right, so it's a right leaning increase. Now we're going to knit every stitch until there's one stitch left on this needle. So that's one. So that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At this point that's 8. And now there's one stitch left. That stitch there. I'm going to knit an increase before the final stitch. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to make a left leaning stitch. So again, if you just pull open your work, you see that little bar there. Going to pick that up, but now we're going to pop it over from the back to the front, over the left needle. So just again, so pick that bar up and over the back to the front of the needle. And now again going to knit through the difficult part, because the front loop is of course the easiest one, easy accessible. You don't want that, you want the back loop. And actually the easiest way to get in it is to come from the back. So now you're in the front loop, and then just kind of roll over the needle, roll it over the needle to the back. I'll just show you that one again, because this is what I find the easiest when I want to knit into that back loop. I'm sticking my needle in here as though I want to purl, and then I'm going to just roll it over to the other side. Now you're in the back loop. You pick up that stitch and you knit that through the back loop, and then the final stitch, knit that one too. And that's it. Now you've increased 2 stitches on this first needle. Now I'm just going to swap it over, pull the top needle back in, and now we're going to do exactly the same on the second needle also. So on needle 2 we do exactly the same as what we did on needle 1. So I'm just going to pull this out, pull that bottom needle out. So again, the same thing. The first stitch is just knit, so just knit 1. And now again an increase. Now you see the bar here, there, between the stitches. Pick up that bar, pop it over the needle, and this is a right leaning stitch, so that means we're going to do it from front to back. And then come into the front loop, and I said this is so it's the harder one that you're going for, and that's unfortunate, but that is how it is. And you see I'm just helping it a little bit with my fingers to just get into that stitch properly, and sometimes you do this 2 times, sometimes you do it 3 times. And then just knit. I've split my yarn, I don't want to do that. Because that happens when the sock is still small. It can be easier to just split the yarn. Well, I've done it again, but I'll be fine. There you go. There you go, now I've got the full stitch on. So that was a right leaning stitch. Now knit every stitch until there's only 1 stitch left. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now there's 1 stitch left, and now we make a left leaning increase. So I pick up this bar and I pop it from the back to the front over my left needle. And I'm going to insert as though it's a purl, and then just roll it over to the back, then scoop up the yarn and knit that stitch. There's 1 stitch left, which I just knit, and then turn the other way and pull your needle back. For the second part of the 2 rows that we're going to be repeating, I'm actually going, before I do this, I'm actually going to be able to, I might be able to pull out the toe yet. No, I'm just going to knit 1 more row. So for this row is in that sense very easy, because it's just knit every stitch on both needles. So I've still got the wrong side of the sock here on the outside. We're going to flip it over in the next, after we've done the next 2 needles. So I'm going to knit all stitches on both needle 1 and needle 2. So I'm just going to pull out, at this point it's still the bottom needle, and I'm just going to knit each stitch on both needles. And I might just fast forward this a little bit in the video, because the essence here is indeed just stick your needle through the front loop and knit the stitch on needle 1, and then do the same on needle 2. That's the last stitch. You turn it around again, pull the cable back, and knit the second series of stitches, and then we're just going to be swapping the toe the other way, that you have the right side of the sock on the outside. So I'm just going to knit every stitch. And the last stitch. There you go. I'm just going to bring it back, so just pull back the cable. And now what we're going to do is you're just going to push this sock the other way. There you go. So what you want to have on the outside now is the knit stitches here. This is the outside of the sock. So just pull it a little bit, and you're going to have two tails here. One is your working yarn. That's going to be now. It's going to be on the back needle, and here you have the yarn tail. And well, at a certain point, we're going to be able to push it to the inside. It's not big enough yet to have it on the inside. But what you have now, so the yarn tail goes to the working yarn. The working yarn is connected to the back needle at this point. And here at the front, we really need to pull this a little bit. This on the front side is something that's called needle 1 at this point. You've got the needle 1 facing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a crochet stitch marker. So it's one that you can open up. And I'm actually going to just attach it to some of the stitches here on the side of what is needle 1. And just close that. And when I've done a few more rows, I'll just move it up a little bit, because this way I now always know what is needle 1, which side of the sock is needle 1, and that becomes important if you work patterns, and if you when you need to make the heel, you need to know which side of the sock you want to make the heel on. So this here, when you have the stitch marker facing, this is you're going to do needle 1, and when you do not have it, so now it's on the other side, you have needle 2 facing. So now we're ready to really start working increases. Now for the next part of the sock, you're going to repeat these last 2 rows that we made. So you're going to knit a row in which you make an increase, and then you're going to knit a row on both needles in which you just work every stitch. So the first part, so again, be sure to work with your with the yarn that's connected to the ball, because this here is the yarn tail. I'm just going to leave it there for the moment. So now we're going to work, I'll show you another increase round. So again, but now it's because you've now flipped this sock to the outside, now you're actually going to pull out the top needle and not the bottom needle. So the one that's to the back, that's the one you're now going to be pulling out, because that's the one that has your working yarn attached to it. So pull out that back needle, and now knit, and so this is going to be an increase round. So we're going to knit the first stitch, and then look for that bar there. Look for the bar that's between the stitches, and pop it on the left needle from front to back. Then come through the front loop. And like I said, this is the harder one, the more difficult one. You sometimes need to help a little bit, and knit that stitch. And then knit every stitch until you have only 1 stitch left. And then you're going to make a left leaning increase. And at this point, and as your toe continues, you of course have more and more stitches to knit before you do the increase. There you go, and then this one. And now again, there's 1 stitch left, so pick up that bar that's in between there and pop it from the back to the front. I'm going to insert my needle as though I want to purl, and then just roll it over to the other side. Grab the yarn and knit the stitch, and knit the last stitch. rotate the other way and pull. So now it's going to be the bottom needle, pull it back in. Again, just what I do is every time I just quickly fashion the stitches, just pull them back out. This is a way of just evening out tension. And now I'm ready to knit needle 2. So I just always pull these back down, even them out. And now I'm ready to knit needle 2. That means I pull out the back needle or the top needle, depends on how you look at it. And it's still an increase round, so it's knit the first stitch. The bar in between, bring it over from front to back into that front loop and knit the stitch. And knit every stitch until you're almost to the end, until you have one stitch left. I have one stitch left. I'm just going to scoop up that loop or the bar that's between the stitches and bring it from the front, the other way around, from the back to the front, and then insert as though to purl and just roll it over to the other side. Knit that stitch and then knit the last stitch. Then turn your work again, so just turn it the other way, pull that bottom needle back in, push it back in, and pull the sock a little tighter. So here's the yarn tail, just going to bring that one to the back. And now you've got needle 1 facing again. You can see that because you've got the stitch marker here. This is going to be the 4th row, but it's just a row 2 repeat, which means knit every stitch. Pulling out the back loop with the back needle, and then knit every stitch. And what's important here is that you just keep track of whether it's an increase row or a knit row. It might help you to just have a little piece of paper that you just put a tick every time you've done an increase row, or a tick every time you've done a knit row, or both. You keep track of row 1, 2, row 2, 1, 2. Just keep track of where you are. So knit every stitch. Then turn your work. Pull that cable back. I'm pushing it in, and then again, like I said, what I always just like to do is just fashion this. So I just pull my stitches down, pull my work down, and it really helps to just even out tension. And now again, knit every stitch on the 2nd needle. Then you're at a point where everything that you've done you keep on repeating until you have the number of stitches that you're aiming for, and it depends of course on what size sock you're knitting, how many stitches you need. For myself, I need 28 stitches per needle. Then I have a pair of socks that fit me. Turn again, push the needle back. My working yarn here is to the back. Now it's just about large enough to start putting this yarn tail inside. I'm just going to move this stitch marker up. This is needle 1. I'm just going to move it up a little bit, and that's just because it's slightly easier if it's just a little bit higher. Then it's not here completely on the edge, if it's just a little bit higher. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit. And the yarn tail, that's actually, I'm going to just push inside. I'm going to open it up, just tuck it in there. And then it's going to be nicely out of the way. And I'll only see to it once we're to the end, when I need to work away yarn tail. So I'm just going to tuck it in there. And now I'm ready to really work my next increase round. Because what you need to do at this point is repeat these 2 rows. So you're going to work a row on both needles, work an increase, and then you work a row on both needles, just knitting every stitch. So these 2 rows that I've shown you, you can repeat them until you have the correct number of stitches. So I'm going to make a jump in the video. So I'm going to knit a stitch, then do an increase, knit everything until I have 1 stitch left, then do an increase, same on the other needle, and then knit every stitch. So those 2 rows, repeat those until you have the number of stitches on the needle that you need for your sock to fit you. When you've worked all your increases, this is what your toe looks like from the other side. This is what the toe looks like. So you see you have a full set of stitches that is now the correct width for your sock. And at this point you can, if you want to work a 2-colored sock like I'm going to do, you can cut the thread for the toe, and then we'll use a different color for the foot of the sock. And you'll also notice here that, especially in this case, this is a stitch mark, so this is needle 1 facing. You'll see that some stitches are a bit thicker, some are a bit thinner, and that is because of the yarn. The yarn has a bit of texture, and that also gives a bit of texture to the sock. So if you have a more even yarn that is the same thickness everywhere, these stitches will of course also be more even. But this is the tip of the sock, this is the toe, and now we can continue in the next part of this tutorial with the foot.